Abusive parents favored my sibling and ignored me. Now they beg me for money. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but recent events have made me realize how far I've come and how much things have changed. Growing up, I was always the forgotten child, living in the shadow of my perfect older sister Emmy. While she received endless praise, attention, and support from our parents, I was treated like an afterthought, barely worthy of acknowledgement. From my earliest memories, the disparity in treatment was glaring. Emmy got new clothes, the latest toys, and lavish birthday parties with dozens of friends. Meanwhile, I wore her hand-me-downs, played with broken toys she'd discarded, and my birthdays were barely celebrated, if remembered at all. But it wasn't just about material things. The emotional neglect cut deeper than any physical deprivation ever could. Emmy got straight A's again. My mother would beam at family gatherings, showing off my sister's report card. She's going to be a doctor someday, just like her father wanted. Nobody bothered to mention that I also maintained excellent grades, often outperforming Emmy in subjects like mathematics and science. My achievements were simply expected, never celebrated. My father was even worse. He'd spend hours helping Emmy with her homework, attending her soccer games, and teaching her to drive. When I asked for help, his response was always the same: figure it out yourself. Emmy never needed this much hand-holding. One particular incident stands out in my memory. I was 15, and I just won first place in the state science fair with a project on renewable energy. I'd worked on it entirely alone, staying late after school to use the lab equipment since we couldn't afford to buy what I needed for home experiments. When I came home clutching my gold medal and a $500 scholarship check, my parents barely looked up from fawning over Emmy's participation certificate from a local art show. "That's nice, honey," my mother said dismissively, "but did you see Emmy's painting? Such natural talent." I retreated to my room that night and made a promise to myself. I would succeed not because of them, but in spite of them. I threw myself into my studies with renewed determination, working part-time jobs to save for college since I knew I couldn't count on their support. When college application time came around, Emmy got private tutoring for her SATs and professional help with her essays. I studied using library books and free online resources. She applied to expensive private universities, with our parents promising to cover the costs. I applied for every scholarship I could find and chose a public university with a strong engineering program. Engineering? My father scoffed when I announced my college plans. "That's no career for a woman. Why can't you study something sensible like nursing, like Emmy?" I ignored his antiquated views and pressed forward. The day I left for college, my parents were too busy helping Emmy move into her luxury apartment near her private university to drive me to campus. I took a Greyhound bus, carrying everything I owned in 2 worn suitcases. College was transformative. For the first time in my life, I was judged solely on my own merits, not in comparison to my sister. I thrived in my classes, secured prestigious internships, and built a network of supportive friends who valued me for who I was. I graduated summa cum laude with multiple job offers, while Emmy dropped out of nursing school after 2 years, unable to maintain the required GPA. I accepted a position with a leading tech company in Silicon Valley, working on sustainable energy solutions, a dream come true for the science fair winner who never gave up. Meanwhile, Emmy moved back home, working part-time at a local boutique while our parents continued to support her financially and emotionally. Years passed, and I built a successful career, eventually starting my own renewable energy consulting firm. I got married to a wonderful man who appreciated my drive and intelligence, bought a beautiful home, and created the life I'd always dreamed of. I maintained minimal contact with my family, sending obligatory holiday cards and occasionally responding to my mother's increasingly frequent Facebook messages about Emmy's latest drama. Then, last month, everything changed. I received a desperate phone call from my mother. "We need your help," she sobbed into the phone. "Your father's company is downsizing, and he's being forced into early retirement. The pension isn't enough, and we've spent all our savings helping Emmy with her bills and failed business ventures. The bank is threatening to foreclose on the house." I sat in silence, letting her words sink in. All those years of prioritizing Emmy, of pouring their resources into her while neglecting me, had finally caught up with them. "Have you asked Emmy for help?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She's not in a position to help right now," my mother admitted. "She's going through another rough patch. Just lost her job at the boutique, and she's dealing with some credit card debt." "I see," I replied calmly. "And now you're turning to me, the daughter you never supported, never believed in, never helped?" "We know we made mistakes," my mother whispered. "We were wrong about so many things. Please, we don't know where else to turn." I took a deep breath. "I'll think about it and get back to you." That night, I discussed the situation with my husband, Mark. He'd witnessed firsthand the emotional toll my family's treatment had taken on me over the years. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you," he said. "But make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and with clear boundaries." After careful consideration, I called my parents back and set up a meeting at their house. When I arrived, I found them sitting in their shabby living room, looking older and more defeated than I remembered. Emmy was there too, slumped on the couch, avoiding eye contact. "Before we discuss any financial assistance," I began, "we need to address the past." For the next 2 hours, I laid out every instance of favoritism, every dismissal of my achievements, every time they'd made me feel worthless in comparison to Emmy. I presented it not with anger, but with clear, factual examples. They couldn't deny the truth of my words. We never realized how much we hurt you," my father said, his voice breaking. "We thought we were doing what was best, supporting Emmy because she seemed to need more help. But we were wrong. We failed you as parents." "Yes, you did," I agreed. "But more importantly, you failed yourselves. By focusing all your resources on Emmy and never requiring her to stand on her own feet, you enabled her dependency and set her up for failure." Emmy burst into tears. "You think I don't know that? I'm 32 years old, living in my old bedroom, working dead-end jobs because I never learned how to push myself or handle challenges. You always made everything so easy for me that I never developed any resilience." I turned to my sister. "It's not too late to change that, Emmy. Part of my conditions for helping will be that you need to take responsibility for your own life." I then outlined my terms. I would help them refinance their mortgage and set up a reasonable monthly payment plan that would allow them to keep their house. I would also pay for financial counseling services for the whole family. However, they would need to follow the financial advisor's guidance, and Emmy would need to move out and support herself within 6 months. "Additionally," I continued, "I expect regular family therapy sessions. We need to address the dysfunctional patterns that got us here in the first place. I'll pay for the therapy, but everyone must commit to attending and doing the work." My parents and Emmy agreed to all conditions. Over the next few months, I watched as they struggled but gradually began to change. My father swallowed his pride and took a part-time job as a consultant. My mother sold many of her luxury items on eBay to contribute to their debt repayment. Emmy enrolled in a coding boot camp, discovering an aptitude for web development that surprised us all. The therapy sessions were challenging but productive. My parents confronted their own biases and the damage their favoritism had caused. Emmy and I began to rebuild our relationship as sisters rather than rivals. Slowly, painfully, our family dynamic began to shift. 1 year later, we gathered for Thanksgiving dinner at my house, a first. Emmy proudly announced that she'd accepted a junior developer position with a growing tech startup. My parents shared that they'd managed to stick to their budget and make all their mortgage payments on time. The atmosphere was different, more genuine, more equal, more healthy. After dinner, my father pulled me aside. "I know we can never make up for all the years we hurt you," he said, his eyes glistening. "But I want you to know how proud I am of the woman you've become. Not just because of your success, but because of your strength and your capacity for forgiveness." "Thank you, Dad," I replied, feeling a warmth I'd never experienced in our relationship before. "That means a lot to me." My mother joined us, wrapping her arms around me. "You saved this family," she whispered. "Not just financially, but by forcing us to face our mistakes and do better." As I looked around at my family that evening, not perfect, still working through issues, but trying and improving, I realized that success truly is the best revenge. But more than that, I learned that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in walking away, but in setting boundaries, demanding change, and giving people the chance to earn their way back into your life. Emmy approached me as she was leaving. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "growing up, I thought I was the lucky one because Mom and Dad gave me everything. But you were the lucky one because you had to work for everything. It made you stronger, while their help made me weaker." She hugged me tightly. "Thank you for showing me it's never too late to change." Today, our family isn't perfect, but it's healthier than it's ever been. My parents have learned to treat both their daughters with equal respect and consideration. Emmy has found her own path to independence and success, and I've found that helping others change doesn't mean forgetting the past, it means using those experiences to build a better future. The little girl who once cried over her ignored science fair victory would hardly recognize our family now, but she'd be proud of the woman she became, and the changes she inspired in others. Sometimes the greatest achievements come not from surpassing others' expectations, but from teaching them to expect more from themselves. It's been 2 years since my last post, and I wanted to share how things have developed with my family situation. A lot has changed, and while not everything is perfect, we've made significant progress in healing old wounds and building healthier relationships. The financial counseling and therapy sessions we started have continued, though less frequently now. My parents have stuck to their budget religiously, and they're actually ahead of schedule on their mortgage payments. They've even managed to build a small emergency fund, which would have been unthinkable before. Emmy has truly transformed her life. After completing her coding bootcamp, she worked hard at her junior developer position and recently got promoted to lead developer at her company. She's completely financially independent now, living in her own apartment and even starting to save for retirement. The change in her confidence and maturity is remarkable. But the path hasn't been entirely smooth. About 6 months ago, we hit a serious bump in the road when my mother's sister, Aunt Karen, tried to interfere with our family's progress. "I can't believe you're letting her control you like this," Aunt Karen told my parents during a family gathering. "Making you go to therapy and financial counseling just to help your own parents? That's emotional blackmail." I wasn't there, but Emmy called me immediately after it happened. "Mom and Dad shut her down right away," she reported. "Dad actually stood up and told her to leave if she couldn't respect our family's choices. I've never seen him stand up to her before." This incident led to some family drama when Aunt Karen started calling other relatives, trying to paint me as a cruel daughter who was taking advantage of my parents' vulnerability. She even suggested that I was trying to steal their house by making them dependent on me financially. My parents surprised me by handling it themselves. They called a family meeting with all the aunts and uncles present, where they laid out the full truth of our past and the positive changes that had come from addressing it. "Our daughter didn't take advantage of us," my father stated firmly. "She saved us from our own poor choices and gave us the tools to build a better future. Yes, she set conditions that have helped all of us grow and improve. We're not victims, we're finally being good parents." My mother added, "If you can't support our family's healing, then you don't need to be part of it." Several relatives walked out that day, but others stayed and listened. Some even apologized for not seeing or addressing the favoritism when Emmy and I were growing up. The incident actually brought our immediate family closer together. One evening, while we were having our monthly family dinner, a tradition we started last year, my father made an announcement. "Your mother and I have been talking," he said, looking at both Emmy and me. "We've updated our will to reflect our new family values. Everything will be split equally between you both, and we've added provisions to ensure that neither of you will be burdened with unfair financial responsibility for the other." Emmy nodded approvingly. "That's exactly how it should be." This was a huge step for our parents, who had previously planned to leave more to Emmy under the assumption that she'd need more help. The change represented their complete shift in thinking about fairness and responsibility. My company has continued to grow, and last month I was featured in a business magazine as one of the top entrepreneurs in sustainable energy. When the article came out, my parents and Emmy organized a surprise celebration dinner. They had framed not just the recent article, but also found and framed my old science fair certificate from high school, the one they'd ignored all those years ago. "We were blind back then," my mother said, tears in her eyes, "but we see you now, and we couldn't be prouder." The financial advisor we've been working with recently told me that my parents have become one of his success stories that he shares with other clients. They've paid off all their credit cards, started a retirement savings plan, and even set up a small college fund for my daughter Emma, who was born last year. "Your parents aren't just following the plan," he said during our last meeting. "They're actively learning and growing. Your father asked me to teach him about investing, and your mother has started tracking every penny in a budgeting app." Emmy has also continued her personal growth. She recently started mentoring at her old coding bootcamp, helping other career changers find their path in tech. "I tell them my story," she told me over coffee last week, "about how enabling help can be harmful, but the right kind of support, the kind that challenges you to grow, can change your life." The therapy sessions have evolved into monthly family check-ins, where we discuss any issues before they become problems. During our last session, our therapist commented on how far we've come. "When you first came here, there was so much unspoken resentment and hurt," she observed. "Now you've developed healthy communication patterns and genuine respect for each other's boundaries." There have been moments of backsliding. Last Christmas, my mother started to fall into old patterns, fawning over Emmy's new promotion while barely acknowledging my company's latest success, but Emmy herself spoke up. "Mom, you're doing it again," she said firmly. "Both of our achievements deserve celebration." My mother caught herself, apologized sincerely, and made a point of discussing both our successes equally. These moments show me that while old habits die hard, genuine change is possible when everyone is committed to it. The most significant change I've noticed is in our family dynamics during difficult times. When Emmy recently went through a tough breakup, our parents offered emotional support without trying to solve everything for her. They listened, sympathized, but encouraged her to work through it herself. "We would have thrown money at the problem before," my father admitted, "offered to let her move back home, tried to fix everything. But that wouldn't have helped her grow." As for me, my relationship with my parents has evolved into something I never thought possible. a balanced, respectful adult relationship. We can disagree without drama, share successes without competition, and support each other while maintaining healthy boundaries. Last week, my father had a minor health scare. Nothing serious, but it required a trip to the emergency room. In the past, this would have triggered a cascade of panic and poor decisions. Instead, they handled it calmly, used their emergency fund appropriately, and kept everyone informed without creating drama. "Remember when we would have hidden this from you to not worry you and then ended up in a bigger mess?" my mother said afterward. "I'm so glad we don't live like that anymore." The most rewarding part of this journey has been seeing the impact on my own daughter, Emma. At family gatherings, she receives equal attention and love from her grandparents, who are determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. They're creating college funds of equal size for both Emma and Emmy's future children, should she have any. "We're breaking the cycle," Emmy said while watching our parents play with Emma. "Our kids will never know what it feels like to be the less favored child." My husband Mark, who stood by me through all of this, recently commented on how different our family dynamic is now. "When I first met your family, there was always this tension in the air," he said. "Now there's peace. Not perfect harmony, but real, honest relationships." Looking back on the past 2 years, I'm proud of how far we've all come. My parents have grown into better people. Emmy has become independent and successful, and I've learned that setting firm boundaries while offering conditional support can lead to genuine change. The little girl who once felt invisible in her own family now stands as a strong, successful woman who helped transform her family's dysfunction into health, not through enabling or accepting abuse, but by standing firm, demanding change, and being willing to support that change when it was genuine. For anyone out there in a similar situation, remember, helping others doesn't mean sacrificing your own worth or accepting past mistreatment. Real change is possible, but it requires clear boundaries, consistent consequences, and a willingness from all parties to do the hard work of transformation. Our family isn't perfect, and we still have work to do, but we're moving forward together, with respect, honesty, and genuine love replacing the dysfunction of the past. And that's a success story worth sharing.